So some information about our regime is that we're a small faction of former military officers that hold intelligence containing government information ranging from reasons behind an economic crisis to government incompetence, which is the few main reasons why this faction formed to begin plotting the revolution. So in terms of ideology, we actually lean towards a more communist ideology because first off, it seems ideal to have government control on the economy. It's just so we actually have a direct control in case of any economic crisis in the future. Now, my personal influence to have a communist regime is because of Vietnam's government ideology, because it aims for the interest of the entire people. At least that's what they say. We overthrew this democratic system because we find a system that appeals to the interests of the people can be more effective than having a government that knows what the people wants but doesn't pursue what the people have interest in. Hence why there's a revolution. Now, this revolution started off as a list of assassinations on government figures that have control on the media, as well as MPPs that are responsible for budget cuts on essential services such as education, for example. Now, until all assassinations are performed or until the federal government took notice, one of our one small faction, we've actually gathered intelligence on of crimes ranging from war crimes Canada has done overseas, as well as white-collar crimes the government made and covered up to avoid controversy. Now, once that information was leaked to the public, it of course it caused an outrage, but we find that as a key moment to start gathering recruits and distribute propaganda to share to the people of the beliefs that these my regime believes, and also in hopes of gathering recruits for the upcoming attack on the parliament. Now, as the government was out of disarray to cover up the leaks, all of our recruits were gathered at Parliament Hill, and we've actually used forged documents and disguises to disguise ourselves as civil servants just to gain access to the building. Now, once we got into the building, we've secured every single entrance to ensure no one escapes, and also kill off every single government figure that is inside of Parliament Hill, because we could not afford to have just one person escaping and ended up reporting to NATO or even the US that Canada was under attack. If that happens, this regime would have quickly been taken over by the US. Now, to the best of my knowledge, all government officials were either assassinated before the raid or during the raid at Parliament Hill. Our methods to ensure that a kill is confirmed is by hiring mercenaries and also taking a picture of their job, hiring assassins, as well as installing car bombs and home invasion. Now, after this regime took power, one of the most noticeable changes we've made was lowering the prices of grocery prices to being comparable to the early 2000s because of minimum wage requirements being cut in half as compared to 2023. It went from $16 to $8. Now, at first, citizens were outraged because of the drastic wage drop, but the reasons behind our actions were actually justified. Now, before this, companies actually have to deal with the high costs of transportation and manufacturing of the products, as well as dealing with high prices of raw material production, as well as the labor costs that workers demand, which they demand for higher wages. All of these factors contribute to inflation that was seen. Now, to combat the housing crisis and as well as unemployment, we've actually created jobs to build houses in hopes to not only end unemployment but also increase the rate of houses to houses being built to also lower the price. We did not make any changes to the international relation Canada has prior to the raid because we find that maintaining these international relations could benefit the country mostly in terms of import export. Now, the quality of life for Canadians mostly improved. While some sacrifices must be made, such as lowering the minimum wage, prices for food not only have been affordable for everyone regardless of status, the Canadian housing crisis actually has been averted as the regime not only greatly reduced the flow of immigration, but we've also, again, as previously mentioned, we've also created jobs for once unemployed people to start building houses to not only meet increase the rate of houses being built, but also try and meet the demand of people wanting houses. Now, this actually greatly influences the prices of houses as they tend to only skyrocket when there's a high demand but a low supply of houses. Now, welfare fraud was also investigated, and it turns out over 500,000 Canadians were actually found guilty of this crime. Now, as a result of that, all were fined to pay off the money that was borrowed or used from the government. Freedom of speech is still permitted, but people will either be imprisoned or sentenced to death if they threaten to even overtake this regime. Now, to deter any citizens from even considering overtaking the government in the future, we've actually made a display of bodies around the country to show the consequences of even considering to take over the government. Now, with the set of new investments to take on, such as funding military hardware and police funding, it would be highly unlikely that there will be another attempt to throw this new government system because martial law is aimed to be enforced until the police develops equipment as advanced as the military's to not only have an intimidation factor, but for practical usage in any given situation. Despite how all of this may look, life for Canadians will continue to improve in the years to come as the regime tackles current issues the government once promised to fix. Now, such issues ranges from the once pharmacare plan that the Trudeau government promised, as well as the empty promise of having cheap internet and phone plans. Those are some of the many issues that we're going to be tackling and also fulfilling. Now, the regime will still remain repressive to the people to ensure that no rebellion will be possible, as well as no hope or any attempts to overthrow the regime as the years go on.